Please welcome Bianca Angelina, Ron Vianu, and Samantha Stokes as they lead us through our 10th session, How AI is Transforming Healthcare and Powering Better Patient Outcomes. In this session, our brilliant panelists will discuss how to leverage and collaborate with real-time AI to inject the patient experience with innovation.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. My name is Samantha Stokes. I am a senior reporter at Business Insider. I'm on our Startups in DC team, and I spent a lot of my time writing about healthcare. So I'm really excited to be here today and to chat with these two people. And I will let them both take a couple of minutes at the top of our session and just introduce themselves a little bit more to you, explain their backgrounds, and a little bit more about what they're building, and we'll hop in from there.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bianca Angelina. I'm the founder of Ailey, and we are on a mission to democratize AI. We have built a very easy-to-use app, which we can put in the hands of any employee in big corporates to really help them to get faster and better insights to take decisions. I've spent many years in pharma in a big company, and I realized that decision-making can be quite complex and can take a lot of time, a lot of PowerPoints and Excels, actually, to get to a decision. That's where I realized that AI can help to really connect, actually, different data points across the organization, from R&D over commercial, finance, manufacturing, and bring this together into snackable insights and help us all better to take better and faster decisions. Now, the impact can be huge, right? Especially in healthcare and R&D. When we talk about snackable insights, we give recommendations on how to accelerate clinical trials, how to prioritize projects in the R&D pipeline. So ultimately, what we help in our recommendation is to really bring the medicine faster to market and in a more efficient way. Awesome.
And my name is Ron Vianu. I am co-founder and CEO of Covera Health. I have spent probably the last 15 years or so thinking about quality assessment across providers, specifically in the world of radiology. For those who don't know, radiology is a very large area of spend within the US, and most patients invariably go through a radiological stage of care when there's a need for a diagnosis. Think MRI, CT, ultrasound, so on and so forth. And there's a significant amount of variability within the field of radiology, this is another piece of information that most people are not aware of, where you can go to 2 different imaging centers and walk out with 2 different results that would send you down 2 very different complete treatment paths. And in fact, there was a study done by the Hospital of Special Surgery a couple of years ago where they sent 1 patient to 10 imaging centers to have her low back imaged by an MRI, common problem. Lots of people have low back issues. And what was striking about this study is that when you looked at the results that this patient received from these different imaging centers, and you looked at the reports that were the most different, they had no findings actually that were the same at all. And that when a physician looked at these 2 different reports, you couldn't even tell it were the same patient. And fundamentally, the treatment that this patient would receive would be different based on these reports. And this occurs again and again in the field where people are getting a prostate MR and getting a result to say you need a biopsy or you're fine. Screening mammography, you need another test or you're fine. And so at Covera Health, which is the company that I founded, we have built an AI-enabled platform that does a variety of things for different stakeholders, and it sits between employers and plans and physicians, radiologists in particular, where for the physician side of the platform, we provide them visibility on the quality that they're providing. What sorts of errors are they committing? What sorts of omissions on different patient populations? And we do it in a way that, at least we hope, allows them to improve over time. So we aggregate this information, we create themes around the sorts of issues that are occurring in their patient population. We take this very same data and then we work with employers, large employers like Walmart and Microsoft and health plans to help them think about how to manage quality programs on their side. And so they think about, take an employer, how do I take an employee that we have or their dependents, and how do I ensure that they get to the right doctor that has the highest likelihood of coming to the right diagnosis for my particular injury or illness?
Awesome. One of the reasons I'm so excited to talk to you both is because even though you're both working, within AI and within healthcare, what you're both building, it's like completely different, which I think is so cool. One thing I'm curious as we kind of get into the founding story of what really inspired both of you to build what you are respectively building, was AI always part of the equation, or was it something where I've identified this problem, I'm setting out to solve it, maybe 6, 8 months or 2 years down the road, we're deciding to bring in some machine learning, and that's helped. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about when AI really entered the equation for you all and why it did, whether it was from the outset or a little bit later on.
Yeah, I guess I can start. In our case, AI is at the heart of what we're doing. It's what inspired me to found Ailey, to leverage AI to get to better insights and find out what actually humans can't see in a big data of organizations. So in our case, that was the purpose and our mission. But of course, it's an evolution. We started with simple predictions, and now we've built an AI brain which managed to solve many more problems that we sought at the beginning.
And it's interesting for us, I mean, it was the polar opposite. We started with this problem of asking ourselves, one, could we even quantify the differences between physicians? If you're going to two physicians and you're looking to be diagnosed, what's the likelihood that you'll achieve the correct diagnosis going to one physician versus another? And we spent several years doing research with an academic medical center out in New Jersey to try to understand, can we quantify quality in a way where we would be able to understand which physicians are more capable or less capable in different subspecialties within healthcare. And for us, as we began to try to scale the system that we built, we recognized that AI would be a perfect tool to allow us to really deliver the system from what we were looking at, which was phase one of what we were thinking about was, could we identify better versus worse, for the lack of a better description, in terms of physician performance. And then we recognized AI can actually democratize quality in the sense that it could take those lower performing physicians and actually help them get better. And so for us, at least at Covera, there's been a meaningful transformation to incorporate much of what we do with AI to help physicians actually increase their performance levels.
Yeah, definitely. Something that's always, as somebody who covers healthcare and health tech, but also is a consumer of healthcare, which a lot of times it really, really stinks. Like, I have doctors who are like shoving printed out papers like into my hands as I leave the doctor's office, and I'm trying to get logged on to my patient portal and nothing is entered correctly, and it's absolutely impossible. So I love kind of talking about AI in healthcare, but on its face, it kind of does in some ways seem a little bit like a dichotomy. Like, you have this system that in some ways is a little archaic, and then in other ways is really, really high tech. So when it comes to kind of building in an industry that maybe has a long way to go in terms of really revolutionizing for the digital age, how are you getting people on board, or what do conversations look like when you're talking to hospital systems or when you're talking to researchers? What does it look like to help people understand the importance of what you're building and to help get them excited about updating those computer systems? So,
I mean, I'll answer that first, and maybe with an example even of my family member. My mother is a very, very fortunate two-time lung cancer survivor. And the second time that she had lung cancer, she lives in Florida, and despite the fact that I've spent the last 15, 17 years of my life thinking about radiology quality, she pursued a particular center that I was highly recommending that she does not go to. Very typical, I think, with parents and their kids. She goes to the center, she gets a PET study, which is a study that was designed to understand whether or not her cancer had responded to radiation treatment. And she agreed, though, to provide me the data, the underlying data of the study, so that I can have folks on our team look at it. And the study ultimately reported to her that she was cancer-free, radiation was successful, and everything's great. We looked at the study, and what we recognized was the study was performed poorly and interpreted poorly. And there's lots of ways studies can be flawed. And in fact, my mother still had cancer, radiation wasn't successful, and she needed surgery. And this goes back to your point that most patients have no idea fundamentally how to navigate a system. Are they a high-quality physician, low-quality physician? Is it an accurate result, an inaccurate result? I joke with friends when we go to our primary care physicians and we look at them and they seem nice and friendly, and we're like, do they know what they do? Do they know what they're doing? And how does one assess that? And so I think to your question, part of it is, I think, at least within the world of radiology, in my space, there is a recognized need that most of the field is not perfectly equipped to handle the most patients all the time. Mm-hmm. And in particular, when you go into rural America or you go into these communities that are underserved, the physicians there will say, we are doing the best with the resources we have. It could be human resources that are not necessarily the most experienced for particular types of patients. It could be technical resources. So when we come in with a solution to say, look, we can help you understand quality in this very specific, narrow way, which is how many of your patients are you diagnosing correctly? How many of these patients are you misdiagnosing? The value prop there is very strong. And so they look at this a little bit as a lifeline, and not to say it's always easy. I mean, sometimes obviously we have hospital systems who will tell us it'll be 4 years before they can implement anything new, but I'd say for the most part, the receptivity has been very positive.
Yeah, and I guess in our case, we come much earlier in the process when it's about R&D process. There are many data out there showing that clinical trials are delayed. In fact, over 20% of clinical trials are delayed by 40%. So imagine if you are supposed to run a trial for 2 years, it takes you almost 1 year longer until you have results. Mm-hmm. So there is a huge opportunity to help on making this even visible, because the reality is that as humans, we like to circulate good news, but maybe the bad news actually take a bit longer. So back to the democratization point, what we help is actually bring this kind of insights much faster to the surface, and then with AI, help with recommendations, how to accelerate the clinical trial and quantify how much faster you can actually get to accelerate. So yes, it is a conservative industry, but I think it's the challenge in it is really the exciting part of it. There is so much to do.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, something that really struck me about what both of you said and your very different areas of healthcare that you're tackling and innovating in is this idea of increasing access to care. You know, you mentioned speeding up clinical trials that maybe were delayed, and you mentioned an elder population, or you mentioned, in rural areas where maybe the best care that you might find in a large city isn't necessarily there. So I'm hoping you can talk a little bit more about, when it comes to AI specifically, what it can really unlock in terms of increasing access to care, and then, I think as a result of that, bringing better care, to patients.
I mean, I can link again back. I'm all about speed, so I can link back to the speed part. Fundamentally, if we do these recommendations across all clinical trials of companies, imagine how much we can unlock in terms of bringing the medicine faster out there. It takes us around 20 seconds to predict milestone of a clinical trial. Now, companies out there have hundreds of clinical trials. We can do this in couple of minutes. We basically can project timelines for all the R&D projects ongoing. Normally, this will take weeks.
Wow.
So having this kind of speed on knowing the insight is already such a big advantage. But that's not where AI is stopping, right? We manage to get so much more intelligent and learn from patterns on how you can actually optimize it in the next step. So it's almost having an intelligent X-ray out there, which shows you that's the problem, you have to accelerate, but at the same time, it also gives you the recommendation how to actually accelerate, and gives you preventive action on how could you actually plan a trial different to avoid this kind of delays in future.
And I think for us, I mean, I have personally visited physicians across the country, rural centers, support hospitals, where often these physicians are doing the best that they can with the little resources, and You'd hear statements such as, I need to cover the emergency department and I need to look at the brain CTs from a physician, but that's not my area of expertise. And so I'm going to do the best that I can, and I hope I don't make mistakes, and I'm going to move on with my life. And you hear this again and again in those communities where they just don't have the same resources that a Mass General or a Columbia Presbyterian may have. And so for us, it's how do we deliver insights into that clinical workflow for those folks that when they're encountering such a patient, we could provide them some additive data that would allow them to go from complete indecision, I don't know whether I should call this case X or Y, that can move them over. A perfect example is we have these programs in screening mammography where today physicians are looking at these studies, they're identifying lesions, and they're making some assessment based on pattern recognition whether they think they are cancerous versus benign. And we can provide them data to say, with actual numerical scores, this has a 300% chance greater of being cancerous versus a lesion that may have almost no chance. It's really how do we get that data to them in that moment where they're making decisions that are not within their area of expertise.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think that's really helpful. Something else that I wanted to ask you both about, and I feel like we were kind of laughing about this earlier, but AI kind of in the public perception has really been in a hype cycle for the last year. I think a lot of that has been fueled by ChatGPT, but the average consumer is like thinking that AI started a year ago, which is obviously not the case. I'm curious, as people who've been building in this space for a long time, maybe what some of the benefits are of AI really having its moment right now, but at the same time, how are you thinking about cutting through the noise of a really broad hype cycle at the moment and really sticking true to what you're building? And we've been here for the long haul, we've been doing this for years. How are you thinking about kind of building as an AI company as AI is having an absolute heyday, in the media?
Sure. I mean, from my vantage point, and we try to avoid really, to the extent that we can, even really talking about what's happening with OpenAI and ChatGPT, because I think that causes lots of confusion with folks. Practically speaking, and because we've been working on AI for many, many years, for us the meaningful difference is really a difference of scale. And so the sorts of things that we were able to build with AI, call it version 1, if you will, however you'd want to describe that, in our particular realm where we're trying to have AI detect errors that are occurring. And to be a little bit technical, it means that radiologists look at films, digitized versions of them today, but they look at films and then they ultimately dictate a report with respect to their findings. And we train AI to do both, to look at the films, come to a conclusion, look at the reports, come to its own conclusion, and then ultimately make a decision as to whether there's a difference of opinion. What we're seeing with these large language models is that, and the appropriate data sets and the appropriate computing resources, that we're able to accelerate that sufficiently dramatically that what we'll be able to deliver to the market would be, to put things in perspective, historically, it could have taken us 6 months to deliver 2 or 3 tools that would help detect errors. We could now be delivering 50 to 100 tools in that same period of time, given call it AI 2.0.
Yeah, and I think it's similar for us. I think important is to leverage hypes to drive your own innovation. In the end of the day, because similar to what you're saying, we already did AI 1.0 leveraging NLP to generate text out of data. So that's not new, it's just like the next level with Gen AI. We managed to do this now much more faster, 5 times faster than we used to do. However, in the end, for us, what we realized, it's still the mix of core basic AI and Gen AI in combination. That's where we can get the value out of it. And I think it's important to really focus on concrete use cases. What can you actually prove on the new Gen AI wave really works? In our case, what we realized that the summarization capabilities with Gen AI are so powerful. We managed to summarize 10,000 pages in literally a couple of hours, but not just provide the summarization, but also the insights of basically what is there and the sentiments. And think about linking now these insights with actually how does it impact your R&D portfolio And is there an event which you would have captured probably 3 months later, which already you can get now in real time, telling you what's the impact on your portfolio and making you trigger a different decision on, oh, I probably, as a pharma company, have suddenly to rearrange my priority on a therapeutical area because most likely the competitor will have better results than me, so I better double down on another therapeutical area than I initially thought. So I find it super fascinating how it pushes ourselves to drive faster innovation. And as long as we focus on concrete use cases, I think we will just all benefit from it.
I want to touch briefly on regulation. Like, obviously, healthcare is a highly regulated space. So when it comes to being an entrepreneur and innovating and pushing the label within the framework of, for a lot of good reasons, there's some innovation, maybe for some bad, or regulation, maybe for some bad reasons, there's, some regulation. So how do you think about building within that framework and where you're willing to push the boundaries, or where you think that's necessary, and maybe some of the challenges, and maybe where it makes a lot of sense based on, what you're building and what your findings have been so far?
Well, I guess you have the tough part on dealing with doctor and patients directly. So,
yeah. So what I would say is, we tend to be overly conservative in that regard, given the exposure we believe we'll have over the next couple of years. But dealing with the FDA, and we're in conversation with them about the things that we're building and the things that we'll be building. I think the FDA themselves are trying to figure out what is the future and how are they going to look at these tools, and their independent efforts aside from the FDA, where academic medical centers are trying to say, how do we validate these tools in a way that maybe is different than the FDA? From our perspective, much of what we've done thus far does not require FDA, and we've designed them in such a way in conversation with the FDA to make sure that we feel comfortable with that. But a lot of what we will be delivering over the next 2 to 5 years will involve a significant, at least in the way the FDA thinks about these things today, a significant involvement of the FDA. And so that adds a ton of complexity, it adds a ton of time, and it delays, obviously, for good reason, deploying these tools real time in terms of how they're impacting physicians.
And I'm curious, as you guys are building, thinking about the next year, what's a challenge that each of you in your respective areas are working through right now that maybe you haven't cracked quite yet, or is still kind of top of mind in terms of where you'd really like to innovate next? And I'm curious just to know, your own respective thought processes to how you're thinking through that.
I think in the end, it's just keeping up to speed on innovating. In our case, we want to double down on Gen AI and just explore more and more what we can embed directly into our product. So I think really, for me, it's more turning the challenge actually into an opportunity again, because it's so fascinating to think from a perspective that we almost have to rewire on how we are actually thinking about tackling different problems. I think that's the part which I'm thinking of as we have new challenges to solve. We also have different possibilities with AI to solve them. And yeah, I'm excited about continuing all the innovation in the space and really delivering applied AI based on the needs in R&D, in our end, more on the backend side. But as we see, there is so much more efficiency to gain.
And so, I'll generally echo all of that. And what I'll say, though, that generally running a startup, I think that there's challenges on the horizon. Like, there may be challenges tomorrow that I'm not even predicting today. And often, unfortunately, that is the case, where every week you wake up and, wow, I'm dealing with something new here. And so just to your point, there isn't one particular challenge that I think about. It's really about team and being able to address all the challenges as they come up and they are meaningful. But as I think about AI, and in particular, one of the unique things that are not challenges per se, but unknowns, is that I think lots of folks, ourselves included, we are trying to accomplish things today with these large language models that there is some uncertainty around how well these models will perform. versus in the way that I think AI 1.0. And so I think for us, as we embark on this journey to leverage the full power of large language models with these very large data sets, and there's lots of publications around, oh, this is working better than expected, oh, but this is working worse than expected day in and day out. So for us, I think that's going to be an interesting challenge to react to how these things are performing. Is it related to our approach? Is it related to the technology? Should we be thinking about these problems differently?
Yeah, definitely. All right, we have a couple minutes left. I'd love to hear from each of you to close out one thing that your startup is doing right now. It's probably going to be hard to pick one, but I want to hear about one thing that you all are either working on or that you've recently accomplished or that you're looking to get into that has you really excited or really proud about the work that you're doing. I know it's hard to pick one of your babies.
No, I mean, proud is a funny thing because, every day we should be proud of what we do and try to think that way. We are going to be announcing something meaningful in the next couple of days, probably tomorrow or the day after, I forget when. And so pretty proud of being able to accomplish that thing that we're announcing, which I can't discuss here, sadly. But I think for me, what I'm most excited about, maybe different than a little bit to say what I'm proud about.
Go with that. That's better than what I asked.
Yeah, I'm very excited about what I think we'll be able to deliver to the physician community in 2024. Like, it's incredibly ambitious, but also within our grasp that we think we can deliver it. And the physician communities that we're speaking with, whether it's academic medical centers or large physician practices, they're equally excited to say, can you deliver this to us? And to the extent we'll be able to, it'll be pretty transformational to how they think about measuring quality in their field. And so that's the thing that I'm really most excited about.
Yeah, I think in my case, it's really the excitement on connecting more dots than what I thought before. We started with connecting internal dots, and now with Gen AI, we can bring more of the external insights and help companies to bring the external perspective inside, which I think with Gen AI, I'm very excited to see how fast actually this goes. So I'm looking forward to see how companies embrace that. And I think with a combination of internal and external insights, we will continue to drive efficiency in R&D and then ultimately bring medicine faster to patients.
Awesome. I think that's a great place to end. But thank you so much to both of you for this conversation. It's been great.
Thank you.
All right.
Another great conversation. Thank you once again to our speakers, Bianca, Ron, and Samantha.